Welcome back to Counting the Cost, your weekly business stop here on Aljazeera. I'm Kamal Santa Maria. Turning to Asia now, Japan specifically, a country crying out for workers as its population ages and birth rate falls. To combat all this, the government instituted a training program for businesses. Bring in young people from overseas to fill the jobs, give them high-level skills, stimulate the economy, get the country back to work. Has it worked, though? More now with Divya Gopalan in our Kuala Lumpur Broadcast Centre.
Thanks, Kamal. Yes, the theory is sound, and indeed there are about 180,000 foreign trainees now working in Japan. Most of them come from China, Indonesia, the Philippines and Vietnam. But many trainees believe they're simply being exploited as cheap labour. And last year, a record 34 of them died during their courses. Harry Fawcett has this story.
He Enying is in his third and last year of a training program at the Nitto Teko steel company outside Tokyo. He's one of 6 young Chinese men working here. In return for the low cost of their labour, they get recognised qualifications in specialised welding techniques.
I like the work. When I go back to China, I hope to apply what I learned here to the kind of work I'll be doing there.
He's boss says the company takes its responsibilities to its Chinese workers seriously.
Our
basic principle is that we don't think of our trainees and interns as mere tools, and we act upon that principle.
This is an example of how the system is supposed to work. A Japanese company gets a willing young workforce to plug the gaps in its roster. Those workers in turn take home vital skills to their home economies. The trouble is, it's a system which is open to abuse.
That's something Lin Wei Hong says he knows all about. He too came from China on a scheme to learn specialist welding. Instead, he was sent here, to the outskirts of Tokyo, to scoop up scrap metal for export.
I spent so much money to come to Japan. When I discovered that the kind of work I will be doing as a trainee was recycling and not welding, I was shocked. But if I'd complained to the company, I would have been fired and left to face my debts back home.
Lin's former employer, Taiwa, declined our request for a statement because the matter is before the courts. He's suing for compensation. As is the family of this man. Zhan Jiadong was working at an aluminium plating factory when he died from heart failure in June last year. He was just 31, with no history of heart disease. His lawyer alleges he was killed by overwork, pure and simple.
Out of 34 trainees and interns who died last year, 16 died from brain and heart problems, but none of that is reported as death resulting from overwork. Up to now, JITCO has not conducted a proper investigation.
The Japan International Training Cooperation Organization oversees the scheme and is supposed to ensure that trainees and interns' rights are upheld. But critics say it's more interested in keeping the companies happy. In a statement, JITCO told us any misconduct discovered by JITCO will be reported and made known to the relevant ministries and administrative organizations. Critics of the trainee scheme say it's a fudge, a way of importing foreign labor without having to dilute Japan's national character through permanent immigration. At the very least, they say, these temporary guests deserve better protection. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Tokyo.
Well, Thailand is battling a severe slump in its lucrative tourism industry. Hotel bookings are down 40% on a year ago, and the blame is being put on its ongoing political instability. Ella Callan has this report from Bangkok.
This is supposed to be Thailand's peak tourist season, but along the Chao Phraya River in the heart of Bangkok, the long-tail boats are mostly empty. Tour operators have never seen it so quiet in October.
This year is the worst. It's actually the worst of the worst. Normally I have so many tourists. The number is so enormous I do not have time to eat.
Around the Grand Palace, one of Bangkok's main tourist attractions, the city's famous tuk-tuks sit idle, as do many street vendors who are barely scraping together a living selling souvenirs.
The number of tourists is down. Well, I say some people are still coming here, but they spend less money. Before they would buy 10 paintings. Now they buy 2, or maybe nothing at all.
The present downturn is expected to cost Thailand $4 billion.
The number of tourists have decreased at least 50%. Normally this time of year is the start of the high season and a lot of tourists are coming. But now it feels like we are still in the low season.
Most blame the ongoing political upheaval in Thailand, which has left the $14 billion per year tourist industry feeling the heat.
Welcome to Thailand!
The country's political troubles are highly visible. Red-shirted supporters of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra regularly hold rallies outside popular tourist attractions, catching many visitors unaware.
Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of people walking around, and obviously there's a lot going on here before that I don't know about. So I'm just trying to kind of understand it all and learn about what they're protesting about, or what they're talking about, what they support or don't support.
It was the closure of Bangkok airport this time last year by Thaksin's yellow-shirted opponents that has lingered in the minds of many foreign tourists. Luxury travellers are still staying away despite an upturn in the economy.
If it's the higher end of the market, because they have a choice and because they have the resources, then the political or perception of political stability will probably come into play more than the economies of it.
But Bangkok's largest hotel remains optimistic and will continue with planned renovations in a vote of confidence for Thai tourism. In most of Thailand's tourist areas, locals are waiting on a surge of last-minute bookings to lift them out of the slump. But it's clear that one thing, above all else, will bring tourists back to the land of smiles, and that's stability. Ella Callan, Aljazeera, Bangkok.
Asia's leading the world out of recession, but what is the picture from country to country? And for more, I'm joined by Bala Ramasamy. He's a professor of economics at the China-Europe International Business School. Mr. Ramasamy, thanks for joining us. It's been a year now, a complete year since the recession hit. If you had to give a picture of what Asia looks like, what would it be?
I think at the moment it is looking good, but I think the key country here is China, right? The recent GDP growth report of about 8.9% for the third quarter sounds great. For example, the IMF has predicted that it's going to be about 8.5% growth for 2009. So it sounds good so far, but of course it is the stimulus package that is causing this particular growth. So the big question is going to be, when the stimulus comes to an end, would the Chinese economy be on a momentum to keep this growth going, so that, say, in 2010, we see a 9% or a 10% growth? Because I think the rest of Asia, in a sense, is dependent on China's growth. We know that as far as exports to the US and the EU is concerned, this is already on a decline. So the only, in a sense, hope is for China to continue this particular growth.
South Korea, for instance, says it's experiencing enormous growth, whereas Japan is questionable. Why is that?
Well, I think Japan has had this problem. I mean, this is not something new, right? Japan has had slow growth since the mid-1990s. So I think looking at Japan as a source of growth is going to be difficult, because this is one economy that is still trying to reach that glory days that it had in the early 90s. South Korea, fine, but this is not, I mean, in a sense, this is not an economy that is so large that could move the, the entire region in that sense. I mean, obviously, in Southeast Asia, you have countries like Vietnam and Indonesia that seems to be showing some kind of growth. The political stability in terms of change in, not change, but the election that took place in Indonesia, for example, seems to have gone, pretty well.
I want to talk to you about this idea that Japan's floated of an EU-style economic bloc. Is this possible, given what you've just told me?
This idea of an economic bloc historically has always come about whenever we go through some kind of an economic downturn. After the 86-87 downturn, for example, the idea of this ASEAN free trade area was mooted. After the 98 currency crisis in Asia, China talked about this free trade area between AFTA and China, and then of course Korea and Japan wanted to join in as well. So it is kind of following history, that whenever we go through a downturn, we look for a grand idea that would hopefully create some kind of a catalyst for growth.
And that is just about it for this week, but check us out online when you get the chance. This is the business page at aljazeera.net/English with the latest financial headlines, and the link on the right-hand side to our business blog. And if you head to the program section of the site, you'll find the Counting the Cost page, where you can catch up with this week's and some of our previous shows. It's all at aljazeera.net/English. That's it from Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santa Maria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.